All right. Hey, thank you so much for joining another episode of Celeste the Therapist podcast. My name is Celeste. I'm a therapist from the best city in the world, Boston. I say that because we have somebody from a different city on here, and I'll let her start um, to introduce. You know how I feel about Baltimore, and I don't like y'all, but I like you,
Okay.
Miss Gorgette. I like you.
Well, thank you, Celeste.
Thank you for that amazing introduction.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I'm Gorgette Green-Hodnett, originally from New York. Lived in
Work.
Boston for 7 years and have been living in Maryland for a really long time. And I'm just awesome and happy to be here with y'all today.
Thank you. And then Chandra, I'm gonna have you introduce yourself.
Absolutely. So excited to be back. Chandra Joseph-Lacet. I am residing in Boston, Massachusetts. Native New Yorker. Gotta
Whoop,
claim it. You knew that was
whoop,
coming. Knew that was
whoop.
Oh,
coming.
my
But
ears are hurting.
I have been here since 1995 and have been with the Boston Public School System since 1999 and proud of that.
Okay. Thank you all for being here. So, like Chandra said and Georgette said, they were here before, and then it was really great to have them on because it was during like the height of the pandemic, and both of them are in the education world. And whether you're a teacher or a parent, I think like this episode is going to be really helpful. And so now we are. So the pandemic was March 2020, and so we're a year and a half in. I know last time when we met, everything was like pure chaos, a lot of scrambling happening. Um, doesn't mean that there's not chaos now, but I think we are familiar with what's happening. I would love to hear from both of you. We could start with you, Georgette, about what it's been like since the kids have been back in school after being on Zoom for so long.
Yes. So I work in Charles County Public Schools and have worked here since 1998. And in the March 2020, when we packed up and left, we had no idea we would be gone for so long. But when we started the 2021 school year, we did start with no children. And at some point, we had some special populations that came in part time. So, 2 days a week. 2 days a week. And then on Wednesdays, we will close the entire system. And that allowed opportunities for students to get extra support and teachers to do training and connections and things like that. So when we opened this school year, 21-22, it definitely was just like we had opened up in 2019, 2020. Everybody just rolled in. I believe that the students were in a form of shell shock, but I believe that they really adapted well. I think that over time, because there was just this kind of open, like normal, air quotes, there were instances where things lacked in terms of preparation and anticipation because we were still in the midst of a global pandemic, and we still are right now as we are airing this live event. So I think that people did the best that they could. I think the pressures of the greater community to get back to normal was more of the focus than it was to think about what might have been the best way to reopen for the children. And I do believe people had the children at heart in some of their interest in reopening, but I know for certain there was a degree of planning that what might have been done differently if schools and school districts had more of a freedom to decide how they wanted the school year to be. And if I were to give an example, there were some that wanted to allow for hybrid learning more. There were some that wanted to have a slow open, and those kinds of things were not options. And I think that it did impact how we started school year 21-22.
Mhm.
Yeah, and you work in public school as well, right? I know
Mm-hmm.
Chandra. Yep. And so I think also there's income barriers too, because it's not just kids going to school, but just kind of what they may have come out of. And when we're thinking about our the kids that you work with, our
Mm-hmm.
population, I feel like the needs is so great. that I know even if the school was prepared to, I feel like it still would be kind of hard as well. Would you say that's fair to say, Georgette?
I do. And I also think the pressure of parents and families and communities getting back to the economic movement that they wanted to see happen was a greater factor in how schools opened than it
Mm,
was what was the best transition for students to return to school? What was the best transition? What was the best
right,
options? And
right.
we believe, just as Chandra and I just did a live focusing on administrators, that those people also might have wanted it to be different, but because of the political stakeholders and the community stakeholders, those types of options were not available.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Chandra, I would love to hear from you from your perspective, what it's been like since we last met. So we last met talking about just the chaos and just like I think we was mainly talking about just kind of like mental health and having people to just
Mhm.
like take care of themselves, have patience and grace. What has it been like? Because it's been over a year since we last talked.
Yeah, it's interesting because we talked at the beginning of the pandemic, right? In March of 2020, when Georgette and I actually first started to really branch out and talk to teachers because we really felt there was a void as far as the conversation with teachers and what they were experiencing. And now I'm really feeling exactly the same thing. I feel like it's phase two. Like that felt like phase one, but it feels like phase two. So, yes, we all went back to school. We weren't all prepared to go back to school. So my
Right.
perspective from where I'm sitting and what I'm experiencing with teachers is that it wasn't a roll back to normal. They opened the doors and we
That's right.
all walked through. There's no question about that. But we all walked through after a year and a half in a pandemic. We all walked through after a year and a half of all sorts of trauma and feelings and you know um, chaos, right? Personally and professionally. And then all of a sudden it was, all right, back to school. Let's test. Let's, have the same exact class sizes that we had before. Let's, get all of our programs up and running like we had them before, as if nothing had happened. And what we didn't account for, I think, is the amount of emotional strain on everyone involved, on students, on staff, on administrators, on the district, on families. I mean, the reality is right now that our district is in fact asking folks at the district level to go into schools and support schools, to take 2 days a week and go and work in schools and cover, right? Because there's just so much going on inside of school buildings that can't be covered by the staff that are there. Lots of stuff that we just did not account for. Much of it doesn't necessarily have to do with academics, but believe you me, academics are affected by it. So this is phase two. We're not out of this yet. We're not over. And we weren't fully prepared for it. I'm not sure we could have been fully prepared, but I do think we could have been better prepared for it.
And so, for people listening, because I know people tend to listen to the podcast throughout the year, we're recording this in November 2021. And so that means that we're a couple of months in. You said something about families, administrators, and teachers. I want to start with like the families and the parents. I have a way of like looking at the full picture in a situation. I think it's just because of what I do for a living. So it's hard for me just to isolate a moment and get rah about a moment. What would you say? We could start with you, Georgette. What would you say to parents who um maybe they also are confused or struggling with the way things are going, and not understanding why some of the needs are met? What would you say to them in regards? And then I'll ask you, Chandra, your thought process on this.
I feel as though I like that Chandra said the doors were opened. And that's really what we did. And I feel like if we're not careful as parents and families, we just put the backpacks on and sent them out the door like normal. And so I don't want families and parents to get comfortable with the fact that their child is, returning to in middle school. The sixth graders, the last time they were in a school building was when they were in the fourth grade. Can you imagine? Think about that for a minute. The fourth grade. People that are ninth graders, the
Mhm.
last time they were in a school building was when they were in the seventh grade. Think about the mindset of a seventh grader now compared to a ninth grader. And so let's take different opportunities to connect with our students to ensure that they are well. They have been through some trauma, they have been through some transitions, they learned and adjusted to having a laptop, some of which have never had one in their lives, and being expected to perform, right? Almost in some ways at the same level as they were with paper and pencil just weeks prior, right? Because when we left in March 2020, we were doing things mostly paper pencil because people told us they didn't have money for computers when we were asking. We had been asking parents, just so you know, we had been asking. But then, thank goodness, the windfalls opened up and now everybody has one, right? But now we still have issues of multiple families. You have Wi-Fi issues. You have the payments of the use of the Wi-Fi. Like that's not free. So what should parents think about? They should think about the realities that their children have grown older, but their degree of maturing is going to be different because their experiences that normally would have happened in a school year didn't happen normally. Their children are still going to have some association interaction challenges, or I should say challenges. Their experience with interacting with their peers has to have been different because again there was a gap in how that took place. People really try to engage their children in online activities and things like that. But now, when everything becomes online, that also becomes old and weary. So, parents and families need to not only pay attention to their children, but communicate with the school. Let the school know what that's been looking like for your child. This does not eliminate you from coming into school. And I have to use coming in air quotes because some parents can't even come in the buildings, right? But please don't lose your engagement and connection with the school staff, teachers. Have your parent teacher conferences like you would. If you had never done it before, this is the year to have it because you want to know where your kid is. You want to know what school is going to look like. You want to know what it's looking like for your child. You cannot rely on what somebody else said their child did or even an older child did in the same school year. So I said a lot in a little bit of time, but these are not common times. The landscape of education has changed, and we need all the stakeholders to participate and play in this playground to know what we want it to look like for our kids.
You said a lot of great things, right? And I think that like even I'm guilty of I have been going to the parent conference meetings, but just kind of putting the backpack on and going. And I have been thinking about the teachers. I don't want y'all to think I'm over here not doing my job. I am. But I want to say something you said that was important is the fourth graders going back to school and middle school, right? Even because I only work with adults, even adults have struggled with the transition into life. And even without the pandemic, I think sometimes as adults and as parents, we forget what it was like to be a kid. And so we may be dealing with some socioeconomic stuff, some other things in our personal life where we be thinking like, well, it's just um school, like you'll be fine, right? So I love the fact that you kind of laid out some of those examples because I really want parents that are listening to this that may have downplayed some of the struggles that their children are having and remind yourself that especially if you're having struggles and you have way more tools than kids do, why wouldn't they be struggling? So thank you for that point. That was really really good. A really good point and an example to help some parents to maybe conceptualize like what's taking place. Chandra, tell me a little bit about your thought process with parents and how they can get involved or what they should know so that they can actually help during this time because we are still in the pandemic.
Yeah. As a parent, I want to remind parents that these are not normal times. And as you put the backpack on, you're also putting the mask on, right? That's not normal. So it doesn't feel normal for us as adults. I know how I feel walking into buildings. Trust and believe it is not normal for our students, some of which literally are walking into school for the very first time. I'm talking about our littlest of kids, right? Our first graders were not in school buildings last year at all. We're not in school. So there's a whole lot of reacclimation that has to happen. Um, and with all of that, and with the mass, and I'm sure this is happening for you, Georgette, with the rise in COVID cases, just the reality among kids, among staff members in schools, the anxiety rises among kids and the anxiety rises among teachers. And I know the anxiety rises among parents. And I know because I get the emails that say, oh, in your kid's school, there have been 4 cases. And you, oh, blah, blah, blah. Have a conversation with your children about what that means. Because I will tell you, first of all, they don't always necessarily know. So communication is really interesting how it happens in schools if it happens in schools. It might happen in one classroom, it might not happen in another. So I would encourage families to have those conversations with kids because kids also talk to other kids. Right. And so they'll so and so is, we got 18,000 COVID cases. Well, that's not true, but they might be feeling that. But if they don't have any of the facts that are coming from you and to reassure them about what's going on, it heightens their anxiety level. Trust and believe, kids at every single level. So please have those conversations with kids. If you get correspondence from the schools about something that's happening and you're not sure about it, whether it be pool testing is happening, it's not happening. Can my kid get access to it? Oh, we're going to have a COVID clinic. Whatever it is, reach out to your child's primary teacher. Do not feel like you can't or you shouldn't do that. You need to be in the know and deserve to be in the know. Please reach out and ask those questions and then share what that means with your kids. I was on a call earlier this week about pool testing at the high school level and how, kids were just like, I didn't know I was supposed to be pool tested for whatever reason. And the teacher's just like, you need to go downstairs. Your name is on the list. So some family member must have said it was okay, but maybe you didn't have that conversation with your kid or you didn't think about it. Ask your kid how they even think about pool testings. I have a high school student. And so I asked her, how
Clarify, what is that, Chandra? Pull testing. Make sure we're clear.
Absolutely. So, what's happening in schools, in order to make sure that we are clear on the number of COVID cases that are happening in schools, we need to do what we call dipsticking, right? So, we do testing, COVID tests of a certain percentage of the population in schools, right? So, that will give us a good idea. One, it'll catch cases, but it also gives us a good overall idea, long time statistically, of how many cases versus, how many folks are in school, all that sort of thing. So pool testing is happening across the United States in all sorts of schools. Maybe some families don't know about that. And if you don't, you really should look that up. You have the right to have your child tested if that's something that you want to do. You also have the right not to. But in this sense, I just want you to have the conversation with your kid about everything that is going on and happening with them relative to COVID, because all of that is extraordinarily anxiety producing for them, which will affect their academics. There is no question about that. They are walking around schools where everyone is masked. They are not social distancing. It is impossible to social distance now that all of the students have returned. It's impossible. They are walking in the bell rings, and all the middle school and high schoolers, all 1,000 of them are walking, touching each other, walking around. That for a lot of students is very anxiety producing. For some students, not a big deal. You need to know how that feels for your student and talk to them about it. And know that if you need more assistance talking with them, or if they are struggling with it, please reach out to the school. Don't just think that, oh, well, kid, you got to deal with it. The schools want to be in partnership with you. The teachers are in partnership with you for the best interest of your student. But trust and believe, we don't always know what a student is feeling or thinking. But if they go home and tell you, we want to know, because we want to be able to help and support. So, overall, I want families to understand that it's not school is normal. It is not. There's nothing about this that is normal. So things were difficult and challenging before the pandemic, no question about it. And things are difficult and challenging at a whole different heightened level right now for everybody who is in the building. So there is some level of struggle that's happening for everyone. Parents need to know that struggle. They need to ask. They need to be informed.
Thank you for sharing that. I just want a couple of key points that Chandra brought up. When it comes to parents and having conversations with your child, especially around things that may be causing some anxiety within them, I would definitely encourage you to have dialogue with yourself, like really be able to ground yourself so that you can feel comfortable with talking to your kids. And I know some of us, including myself, may not have grown up in a system where we had authentic, vulnerable conversations about like feeling nervous or even any vulnerable feelings. So that may feel like somewhat challenging. So I really want to encourage you to like do that part. The part about reaching out to the school, believe it or not, like I'm not a teacher, but I know teachers actually enjoy or would welcome the dialogue from you because a lot of times they're going in with a blind eye, and there may be something that the teacher's not aware of that can help the teacher understand your child better and give your child a better opportunity to reach their milestones or their goals when it comes to school. I think that's really important. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think that parents who are listening to this can have another perspective about what's going on. Because, with kids, they're so resilient. And I can see them just kind of going to school, coming home and struggling. And if we can like catch that struggle in its infancy, so it's not building into something bigger, that would be great, right? Like that would be ideal.
So
Anybody
let's
have any got thoughts? Yeah.
when Chandra was talking, it made me think of two things. There are students that used to just love school because they knew after school there was going to be a club or activity that they could participate in. And
Yeah.
so that's the other side that's just not there the way it used to be. I know someone was saying that in the particular club that she advises at the school I work at, it's limited to 20 students. So imagine a school of 500 kids, there's 20 clubs, and the clubs are limited to 20 students. So the impact of the ways that schools were able to help meet expanding opportunities for students and helping them explore new exciting opportunities is also limited. Parent volunteers are not allowed in the school. So when we did the book fair, I was in there volunteering because the parent volunteers you're accustomed to being able to see are not there. And then the last thing, Chandra and I are both parents to college students. And so we don't want to eliminate them from the conversation as well. So for some, my son was a freshman or living on campus, and he got sucked up out of there and had to finish that freshman year at home. Spent the second year at home and then decided he didn't want to go back to campus. And some parents might have struggled with that. They might have said, you need to, we're paying or they're paying. But I needed to allow him to make that decision. And so when we're talking about the investment of college, that's also a challenge because there are some people, their kid might be on campus right now and they don't want to be there. So what are we going to sacrifice? So we're going to sacrifice what that means for them to stay because we've paid or not stay. Those are challenging decisions. They're not easy. And so just again, adding to the fact of having conversations with our children, because what we knew college to be as people who lived on campus, Chandra and I talk about this all the time, it's not the same story and it will not ever be again. And so we just have to, keep it real when it comes to that.
And let's also remember that no two children are alike, right? So I have one kid who's in high school and I have one, kid who's in college. And their return is, they're very, very different, right? So again, talk to your students and please don't assume, families, that every child is super excited that they're back in school in this way. I can tell you, my high schooler, not excited at all. That she loved hybrid. It totally worked for her. It worked for her personality and she thrived on it. And going back to school has been a huge struggle for her. And I will put out there to say that, she's learned to do school really well, but is she excited and happy that she is back in the building? Not at all. And I would not necessarily know that if I was not having those conversations. And so it means I have to put in extra layers of support for her and do things differently and let her teachers know, right? That this is how she's feeling, right? Whereas, another kid is like, yay, I'm ready to go back. You don't know unless you have those conversations with them. You might be surprised how many of your students are not completely thrilled that they're going back to school in this particular way, in this particular environment.
Yeah, and a lot of that too. People's like, well, why wouldn't I know? I think sometimes people don't have language. If they're surrounded by people that appears to be excited and they're not, they might feel shamed or embarrassed to speak up. So just kind of the conversations, real talk, real time. That's Chandra and Georgette's theme, is important to have. So thank you for sharing that for my families. Now for like I want to talk about the administration piece, and then I want to end with the teachers. Um, I guess, Georgette, we can start with you. What is your thoughts, or tell me what's happening or what you're seeing on the administration level? Because I know they have people to answer to on the top end, and then they have the people they're trying to account for on the other end. So I know they're in a really hard place right now, because I'm sure administrators have kids as well and their parents. So, but it's like they have to do what they're told. I would love to hear what's going on in that end from your perspective.
You said it. End of the show. I think. I mean, you said it, Celeste. There. Let's just take a school principal. The principal has district level leaders who are setting expectations for them, some of which they may or may not agree with, and they have to make decisions for their school and their staff. Then they have staff that they have to support, some of which are not comfortable being here, might not want to be close to kids, um, because of fears of COVID. Um, some of those principals have maybe even themselves had to deal with personal direct links to the impact of COVID-19. And so they are dealing with a lot. And then, of course, their primary focus is the students. So a lot of their time and attention has been, when we opened, making sure that we had systems, procedures, PPE, all of those things for their staff. And I think at this point in the year, my heart really goes out to them, because these folks have been working tirelessly from March of 2020. Now, I'm going to tell you how I was feeling in March of 2020. I remember distinctly. I was like, I can't take it. I'm tired. I'm tired of repeating myself. I was having that. And I was like, if I could just make it to spring break. Okay. I got to make it to spring break. But imagine that principal who was saying the same thing. And then he didn't get it. It wasn't a break. It wasn't he worked from home. He or she was in that building. They were giving out food. They were distributing PPE. They were collecting and giving out laptops. They have been on the horn ever since the beginning of school year 1920. So for that administrator, those who have their own families, their own lives, they are, if I were to speak for them, they are truly taking it one day at a time, because you don't even know what tomorrow brings when they talk about what's going on in the schoolhouse right now. I'll give you an example in terms of just the procedures that had to be instituted to deal with quarantining or cases that come up in a building, all brand new. So that would be how I would just address. They are taking it one day at a time. You might have found in your schools, your children's school, people retired earlier than they expected, changed jobs, positions, all kinds of things, because in some cases, the pandemic helped them to make new and different decisions for what they wanted for themselves. And we have to respect that too. But if I could, I would just honor them. That's what Chandra and I did the other night, just honoring the realities of what they're trying to face. And they know it's not even over. We're only in November.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And because, for the teachers and the parents listening to this, with the administrators, they're human. Just like I talked to people about their parents, and they were supposed to call me, or I was supposed to do this. And, I said, well, parents are human beings as well. That's their role. Like that's, but they still have like their own stuff. And I remember last year, when my son's principals had called, he was changing classes for him. And then after he finished, I said, how are you? And I promise it sounded like he wanted to cry on the other end, because it was like nobody's asking him that, right? Like he's calling me to deliver a message and check in, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm just like, well, how are you? And he took a long pause. And so I really want people that are listening to this that may have, may walk past the principal's office or that administrator's office and just kind of check in, because they're dealing with a lot. They're trying to hold space for like people above them and people below them and parents. So I can only imagine. Chandra, I would love to hear about your thoughts on the administratives and like what's happening with them and how people can support.
I am feeling for my administrator colleagues like nobody's business. As a former administrator, I cannot imagine what it feels like to be administrator in these times. And that's completely honest. It was unbelievably hard before, there's no question about it. And now they're dealing with everything that we're talking about, right? At the student level, at the teacher level, at the parent level, the district level, their own stuff. And the game has changed. So where you walk into the building before and maybe there were, let's say, two, folks that were absent. Now you've got 5, 6 folks that are absent every day, not every once in a while, every day. And they have to find coverage, and coverage doesn't exist. We can't get subs in the same ways that we could before because of everything that's going on with COVID. People are very, very concerned about going into school buildings, right? So the sub lists are not what they used to be anymore. Teachers, staff are getting ill. Sometimes it's COVID. Sometimes it's I got a cold. Sometimes my child is sick and I have to stay home. But that administrator still has got to figure out that coverage. How do you figure out coverage for 6, 7, or in some cases, much larger numbers of folks who are out every single day? And you're talking about teachers who are out. You're talking about paraprofessionals that may be out. You're talking about cafeteria workers that may be out. You're talking about custodians. I mean, you're talking about every single level of a school where folks may be out. You're talking about the fact that kids are experiencing some trauma. And I tell people all the time, schools are microcosms of the world. People are talking concerned, oh my goodness, all this, the fighting that's going on in schools. And have you been watching what's been going on in our world lately? Have you been watching? Because the kids are watching and the kids are feeling it and experiencing it. So what we're seeing at some level in schools is anxiety, conflict, not knowing how to deal with conflict, anger, right? Oh, racial injustice. They are experiencing all of that. And again, administrators have got to deal with all of that at the same time that they're dealing with whatever district piece, they're telling them to do, because the district hasn't not necessarily told them that they can not do X, Y, and Z. You still are responsible for that, long list, right, of everything that we've given you. And now there's this whole other added list that you have got to deal with every single day. And you have no idea what you're walking into. So in general, our administrators are putting out fires all day long when they really just want to be instructional leaders. That's what we need them to be. And it's not that they don't want to be. Where can they possibly find time to be? Parents sometimes don't know that sometimes there's one administrator in the building. Depending on the size of your school, you might have a principal. You might not have a principal and an assistant principal and, a director of instruction or instructional coach. It might just be you. And even if it is 2 of you in a building with all of those staff, all of those students, and all of those fires that are going on all the time, it is much more than we could ask any 1, 2, or 3 folks to handle on their own. So let us please be patient. Let us please show them some grace. Let's ask them how they are and how can we help? How can I support you? As a parent, how can I support you? As a teacher, how can I support you? Genuinely, how can I support you? Participate in your school site council, your parent council, like participate and see what ways that you can really contribute to really support the administrators in your building.
Yeah, and for people, thank you for sharing that. That's important information. And I think for parents that may not have thought about like student council or the things that are happening in school, and you may say, oh, why I have my own stuff I got to do. But just remember, if your child is going there, I would want them to have like a nice environment, a good environment. And it allow you to kind of see what's going on firsthand, and be involved, and your child can see you involved as well. I think that's important. But for people that are teachers, that's the population. And we're going to talk, I want you guys to share We're going to talk about the teachers and what they're dealing with, and then talk about what you guys have done. But you know, if I'm a teacher at this point, I'm like, the parents are struggling, the administrators struggling. I don't know if I want to do this, but y'all gonna give us some good nuggets, because I don't know right now. At this point, I'm at the point where I'm like, what am I gonna do as a teacher? Because I can only imagine, you know, what they have going on. Georgette, can you want to start and share, because you guys are running groups, and so you're seeing and hearing firsthand knowledge on what's happening.
So since the pandemic, March 2020, Chandra and I started doing Real Talk, Real Time with Chandra and Gorgette. And we really were just trying to create a space to encourage and support teachers during this shift, you know, from in person to remote learning. We didn't even know what we were doing, but we know that of every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we had people rolling in from around the country. And what that meant was providing these intimate opportunities for people to just kind of share their reality, whether it be the teacher from New York City. I remember the call, the one who was in New York City, like, we have children missing. We don't know where they are. They have never reported. They are not at school. We don't know if they have COVID. Just the sheer I guess almost despondency of that teacher, like, what in the world? We have no idea. And that was very different from the teachers that joined us from Milton, Massachusetts, or that joined us from Roanoke, Virginia. So that is what we feel like we're here for. And you know, we realized that was our place in the world in the ways in which we could give. But what we know from those teachers is that they're committed. They want what's best for their students. But unlike many years past, they're starting more to think about what's best for themselves. And if you've ever been a teacher, and there's many people that dabbled into teaching, you know, did a stint, transition to something else, you know that many times we've sacrificed ourselves, our families, our times, our talents, our coins to try to make things happen for the students and for our schools. And I think what the pause of the pandemic did is it allowed teachers to kind of reflect and think differently about what they're responsible for. But it's not really a selfish place. It's just a place we've never really gone from before. So while, you know, there's this kind of community thought that, you know, people who leave at 3:30 are, you know, not really committed, or people who want to take leave the day before holiday, or, you know, whatever that is. So there are some unwritten rules in our community of education that make or have been made to feel like they're real. Like the rest of the world doesn't go on vacation the day before Thanksgiving, and the rest of the world don't get their purse and leave when the end of the workday happens. But we have for so long been doing it, without um, without even complaining, that now in the pandemic, Chandra said there's subs are a shortage. The teachers are taking their leave. I had a teacher say, I had to take 2 days because I wasn't going to make it. I felt myself starting to get riled up over the littlest things the kids were doing. And so I had to put my leave in. And I said, I applaud you, because it's also about knowing yourself, knowing your limits, knowing your parameters. And the thing that I have said in my time in working is that leave is a part of the negotiated contract. I'm not stealing leave. I earned that. When you hired me, I was given a certain number of days. I got a pot full there. And if I choose to take them, you can't criticize me for doing that. And so, just the first thinking, because I know I'm going to have more to say when Chandra starts talking, but the first thought I would say is that teachers really have just begun to think differently and thinking about themselves. And I encourage you to continue to do that, not at the expense of your work, because I am a big proponent. I'm all about teacher empowerment. You need to use your voice to speak about what you need. You need to know what you need, speak about what you need, do what you're supposed to do within the parameters of your work, but also don't be, be unapologetic about taking your leave, taking care of yourself, communicating, your realities, and being good examples and models for the students. That I think is really important.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I didn't realize there was these unspoken rules, and I mean, I guess every field has these unspoken rules, but the idea that I need to continue to perform because I don't want them to think I don't care. It's good to hear that teachers are actually starting to change that mindset. And for teachers that may be listening, who are struggling with like caring for you, just know that if you're not there, they will have to replace you anyways. And so you don't want to play like Russian roulette with your mind. And I know so many people do that. So, Chandra, what are you noticing in these groups that you and Georgette are doing around the teachers, and what has changed since March of 2020? Yeah, I can't believe it's been almost 2 years in March. That's crazy. Golly, I keep saying it. And I'm like, wow.
It is crazy. And just like the unspoken rules have changed, they've changed because COVID was a game changer. Period. Done over. It was an absolute game changer. And I think teachers and a whole lot of other people and people who were considering teaching really had to stop and pause and say, hold up, let me really think about this thing that I call teaching in relation to everything else in my life. Because all of a sudden, when the world stopped, you began to really think about the things that were really important to you. And it was a hard thing, but it was a great thing. And we need to remember that. We don't want to go back, right? We want to keep moving forward. And so, I think what Georgette and I do is remind people that this is a worldwide pandemic. We're still in the middle of it. You still have the right to choose, and you should. And it's not an either or. It's not either I'm a great teacher because I'm sacrificing. And I have such a hard problem with the word sacrifice. Like, is that what we're supposed to be doing for our work and our job? That's wildly problematic for me, right? Um, Sacrifice who we are and leave who we are as I like to say, at the school door, right? We don't ask kids to do that, but we ask teachers to do that all the time. No more. What we want you to figure out is, how do I bring my whole self into that building? If there are times you can't bring your whole self into the building, that's okay too. Don't. You have the right to not do that. Be planful about it, right? You let your team know, you let your administrator know, you have your sub files out. We know how this rolls. Because believe it or not, the world will keep spinning. It will keep spinning without you. You might break down, but the world's going to keep spinning, right? So instead of figuring out, oh my goodness, how am I going to last till Thanksgiving break? How am I going to last till, winter break? No, the question is, how am I going to thrive and be the best person I can be every single day? So instead of waiting to take those vacations, how are you building in vacation time every single day? And I say that all the time. I don't mean you're picking up and you're flying somewhere, but are you just taking 10, 15 minutes to just be quiet? Are you taking your lunch break? Most folks are not. And when I say lunch break, I don't mean shoving stuff in your mouth as you're sitting at your desk, going through your grades. I mean, are you seriously taking a duty-free lunch? Walking away, maybe you're going to take a walk outside the building, maybe you close the lights in your classroom. Are you doing that? Are you not feeling guilty because you're leaving at 3:30 or 4 or whatever? Are you not doing 2, 3, 4 hours of work at home on top of the 8 hours you already put in? And yes, I say 8 because it's not a 6-hour day. It's an 8-hour day for most teachers, right? And I think more and more teachers are talking to themselves and talking to one another. We're finding in our experience, right? And saying, yeah, that's okay. As a matter of fact, yeah, you need to do that. That's a really good idea. I'm going to tell other people about it. Like, spread the word. Like, yeah, teachers are people too. Hello, I know people forget we are. And I'm going to say this because people forget. We don't wear no capes. I don't have one in my closet. I don't have an S across my chest. I am no superhero, nor do I want to be. Nor do I want to be or thought of as such, because that's where that sacrifice mentality comes in. Oh, the teachers can do it all. They'll do it all. No, like, we are people too. And we got to rein that in. And let me tell you, because we're having such a teacher shortage, if teachers who are currently working are not good models of self-care and work-life integration for the young folks who are coming behind us, we are not going to have the teacher workforce that we need in order to fill all of our schools and teach our kids. I don't know how many people are paying attention. Those of us who are teachers are paying attention, but the teacher work shortage is a real thing. It is a real thing in our schools right now, right? Because of COVID. It's a real thing in our ed programs. Our ed programs are not full. People don't want to be teachers. We better get better at what we're doing. We better get smarter at how we are presenting our profession and how we are taking care of ourselves, and allow people to see that this is actually a doable profession for a number of years, as long as you want it to be. It is doable because we haven't shown people that. We haven't been good models of that. And so here we are, we're breaking down and we're looking back, and people are going, I don't want no parts of that. I'm not trying to, that's some crazy mess. No way.
And how we are being treated. Let's just take a minute with that. Even when I was a classroom teacher, because now I'm a coach of math teachers, parents would just feel like they could just talk to you however they want at whatever hour. I called you at 2:30. They said you was teaching, so it's 3. Well, ma'am, I literally just walked them out, to the buses. Can I get a minute? Can I go to the restroom? So how we're teaching our teachers is also going to impact our communities. And then people are like, these teachers in this school, they ain't no good. That. Okay, so you can speak that into full existence, because they're not going to want to be at your school. So we have to do a better job with that. And the last thing, while Chandra's talking, because she always inspires me, is the fact that teachers have a way, and I just feel like we have to say this, of putting their work email on their cell phones. I am here to encourage you to stop that foolishness. And why? Because you have, Chandra says we don't have capes, but we also, Chandra don't like work-life balance, because that means work is equal to the rest of your life. And it's really not. When you put that cell phone, that email on your cell phone, you are putting that into your personal life. Whatever was not said or done on Friday will be there on Monday. And you need to learn, like, if you don't know where to start with that. Unless you're an administrator and that's a required aspect of your job, then I suggest you take that work email off of your phone, because that is a great beginning to you establishing boundaries around how to function fully in the best part of your life, which is, we really work a small portion of our day, right? The rest of it is ours. So when you put that work email on there, you bringing all of that home with you. Stop it.
And when
Mhm.
you respond to those emails or those texts that roll in at 10 o'clock at night, you
Yes,
then have taught people how to treat you.
that's right. And
That's
you
true.
you
Period.
the culture, Celeste, is like, oh, that teacher emailed me when I emailed her at 8 p.m. Well, ma'am, that is fantastic. I didn't say this, but I'm not doing that. And I'm not doing it because I have to set parameters. And
Yeah.
it's okay to do that.
hmm Yeah, you do. You teach people how to treat you by what you allow. And I love that, to take the email off of your phone for teachers or anybody who's working who doesn't need to have it on their phone. It's a good idea to take it off. That's really important. And one of the things that Chandra and Georgette have done is created a community for teachers to kind of come together. I think when we are not think I know that when we are in isolation, it makes things worse. And so, what better way to build community than to be able to speak to people who are in the same boat as you? And I think teachers are like in this boat together. I would love to hear, they've come on before to share what Real Talk Real Time is. But for any people who didn't hear that episode, and I'll have it in the show notes for you to go back to, for people that may want to hear how it kind of started. But tell people about what it is and what you're doing now. We can start with you, Chandra.
Sure. So, Real Talk, Real Time started back in March of 2020, and it was Georgette and I having a conversation with one another with the teachers that we were working with, right? We were both instructional coaches, and we noticed that everybody was talking about teachers nobody was really talking to teachers, right? They were talking to students, they were talking to families, and they should, but nobody was talking to teachers and talking with teachers about what they were experiencing. And so we decided that we were just going to do this. And we literally put out some flyers, opened up a Zoom room, and people came and people kept coming, And at first it was like people we knew, and then other people found out. And then we had teachers from California and Vermont and New York and Florida, just all over. And then we had school nurses that were coming on, and guidance counselors and para educators, because there was such a void. There was no place where educators could talk to other educators about what they were experiencing and what they were feeling without judgment, right? And come out on the other side and with really practical things that they could do the next day, the next week, that made them feel empowered. Like, you are not completely helpless in this scenario. Like, there's all this craziness going on, and that's real. That's awful. What can you do? Right? Where can you make your impact? And that's how we started. And then we just grew into, okay, we got to do this amazing presentation for new teachers in Maryland, which was phenomenal. We got to go to Brandeis this summer, and we talked to the teacher leadership group there, which was amazing. We've developed now a whole series of lives that we're having to talk to our community about what's happening right now from an administrator's point of view, from, teachers' point of view. We're going to actually have special groups. We're going to talk to para educators. We're going to talk to, math teachers, special ed teachers, about what's really going on. So we hope that it continues to be a place that teachers will come and feel welcome and feel like they have a voice and they are empowered to take care of themselves. We also hope that it's going to be a place of education, because the lives that we're doing are in our Facebook group, but they're also on our YouTube channel, so anyone can access them. We hope to be a continued point of education for everyone in our community and beyond. Like, we just want folks to know what's going on, to be informed, and, figure out how you can chip in and help in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Everybody in this universe is touched by education.
Thank you for sharing that, Chandra. I mean, sorry, Georgette. Share with people, because I know you said you get inspired by Chandra. So, so I let Chandra go first. Girl, get them inspiration going.
Yes.
What did Chandra leave out?
So Chandra left out that on Facebook, we are Real Talk, Real Time Educators Forum. And that was birthed out of our series that we did every Thursday during the pandemic, which was Real Talk, Real Time with Chandra and Gorgette. So that Facebook group is open. Join us. You don't have to be an educator, but that's our focal group. So if you don't want to hear about it, don't join. But if you know someone, please send them our way. We are thrilled to have that group. And then on YouTube, our channel is Real Talk, Real Time Educators Forum. Chandra did not tell you all about the passion project that we are working on. It's going to debut in January. And so what we're doing is, we were talking about really helping, supporting, and holding up teachers during this time. But what we found is that a lot of these educators have passions that went outside of their work. And so we are interviewing them about those passions. So we call it the Passion Project. And it is fantastic. We have former school leaders, district leaders, classroom teachers, administrators. And what we love is you can almost like feel the energy from the first question, because like anything, Celeste, when you do, like you doing this, when it's something that someone loves, it just emanates right off of their body. So that is our newest thing that we're working on. We're excited. So if you're an educator, you have a passion, you're a pilot, or you're an artist, you're a dancer, you're a podcast, whatever it is, check us out. We would love to have you to be a part of our series. It's going to launch in January. And then we, of course, are professional developers. So that's what we've grown up doing professionally. And if anyone's looking for people to do that with your schools, your school districts, we're your girls.
Thank you. That was good. And there's some, for people with this whole passion project, that sounds awesome. No, I noticed for anybody in any kind of field that they're working in, there's sometimes people have this passion that they're not like tapping into, and they feel stifled or they feel like they're not growing. So you may love teaching the kids at the school, but you feel like there's more. It sounds like what you're trying to help people pull out of them, what they have to help them like
Yes.
grow. Yeah, that's
Yes.
good. I love that idea.
And to inspire other teachers to do the same, right? Because
Yeah.
sometimes you have this passion, like you said, Celeste, and folks are like, nah, I can't do it. I'm too busy. I'm teaching, I'm doing whatever. But there are teachers who are doing amazing, amazing things. And there are teachers who have thought about doing amazing things. And we want you to do the amazing thing that is sitting in your belly, in your spirit. Like, go do it. Figure out how to do it and just do it, especially now. You need
Yeah.
to feed your passion. You need to feed your passion.
Yes. I'm glad we ended on teachers because this is the population that you're working with. And even though, you work with teachers, we got to talk about every population. And also, I'm very big on like talking to the Black community. And I think that for teachers, regardless of what race or sex you are, if you're working in the inner city or with our people, I think that it's it sometimes can feel hard to separate yourself because the need with the systems is so great, right? And so just know like you're one person, as somebody that's in the mental health field and I've been in here for years. I got burnt out when I tried to like do everything, right? And then I had to remember that I'm one person, and I actually end up doing more for people when I've done more for myself. Like the way I give looks differently, and it's more balanced. So for the teachers that are struggling with what's going on in the world and just like maybe feeling bad about the systems, know like it's not going to change in like with just you. And so we need you to take care of yourself so that you can like help the kids. Does that make sense?
I love that. That
It
is
Okay.
yeah,
110%. That's
we
exactly right.
agree.
Take
Mhm.
care of yourself and find your tribe. Don't go it
Mhm.
alone.
Nope. And that's what, Chandra living in Boston, I'm living in Maryland. We find so many things in common, and and I think that's the other reason why we really like this partnership, because people assume you're boxed in, you're alone, no one else can relate. And just up 95 about 8 hours, some of the same things are going on. Okay. And while we've had a friendship for over 20 years, um, we never really came together around our work parallels, and it is through that we're actually able to help others. So look at that, and us trying to hold each other down, we were able to help so many others. So that's exactly what you're talking about. But in terms of the Black community, I really just want us to not lose sight of encouraging our Black folks to still be educators.
Mhm.
It's important that we're in schools. It's important that
Mhm.
we're in communities. Black and brown folks need to be there for our kids. And
Mhm.
so, because you brought that up, I do want to say that our forum is not limited by race. Let me
Mhm.
be clear about that. But as a
Mhm.
Black woman, I want to encourage, and I try to be a good role model for others to say, education is an admirable field, and if
Yeah.
we're not there, then our children are not getting their needs met and
Mhm.
supported in those unique ways.
Mhm. Thank you. Chandra, any last words you want to say? Thank you, Georgette. That was really good.
I just want to say that one, I'm so excited to be here again. And I really am. And I could talk about like teachers and education and the work that we do and the importance of the work forever. I don't want anyone to get lost in the weeds of what's going on right now, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's remember our why, right? Why we came
Mhm.
into this profession, why we're so passionate about what we do. Don't get caught up in the crazy that is happening, right? Don't get caught up in the mandates that come. Those of us who've been around long enough know the mandates come and they go. Stay focused on the children, right? As you work every
Mhm.
day, stay focused on your own children and family and yourself.
Mhm.
And trust and believe the other stuff will take care of itself.
Thank you. That was good. I appreciate you all. And for people listening, you can find the link to the Facebook and the YouTube in my show notes. But it's real talk, real time. I appreciate you two for coming on and blessing my show with your presence and your knowledge.
Yay!
Yeah, like your last episode was really good. So many people loved it and joined your platform. So hoping we get new people on and to
Yes.
continue to share the knowledge. So thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Thank
We'll
you
be
for
happy to
what
come
you
back
do, Celeste.
anytime. You
Yes.
are
Oh,
awesome. And
oh,
we
can you
saw
say it
you.
again for the
You're
people in the
awesome.
back?
You're awesome. And I saw you on that show too.
Which show?
Where you was the guest consultant. Kudos to
Oh,
you
yeah.
for
Thank you.
expanding your
All
reach
right.
too.
Thank you. Okay, it's about you guys. We gotta go. Bye.
Oh, we love you.